right. Welcome to the DotPro Show with BreakyCPK. Going to be joined by Zrock as always here very shortly. But boy, oh boy, do we got quite the show for you ahead of us here. Obviously, we are going to be recapping TI7 as a whole. We had a lot of fun there. I know I can speak for myself. It was everything plus more. It was a great event. Had a lot of fun. Got to talk with so many people, see so many people, and hang out. And of course, to top it all off, we got to watch some great Dota. I mean, watching Dota in a huge arena like that with tens of thousands of fans around you, all clapping and cheering and everything, especially when big plays happen. There's nothing else like it. Obviously, you know, I've got the chance to go to like traditional sporting events plenty, from football to basketball to baseball, whatever. And sure, those are fun as well, but it just seems like something about Dota 2, let alone esports in general, but especially Dota 2. It's just the people watching are just that much more invested, right? They're that much more, involved. They're that much more excited, and you could definitely feel it there at the event. So, TI7 officially wrapping up. Team Liquid, of course, winning it all. And on top of that, though, we also are going to start talking about some roster shuffling. In fact, already taking place, as well as kind of giving our input as far as rumors and what we possibly think is going to happen and so much more. So we're going to talk about that later on. But before all of that, of course, want to kick things off with what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. So as far as the good goes, pretty straightforward here. As you would expect, TI7 officially wrapped up. Team Liquid are your TI7 champions after an insanely good run by them. They had to come from the losers bracket early on. Obviously, they were in the winners initially. They got knocked down by what was Invictus Gaming at the time. And, to the surprise of a lot of people, no doubt. And in fact, overall, the Western Sea was struggling when it came to these early results. But Liquid grinded through. They had to defeat Team Secret. They then had to defeat Virtus Pro later on, amongst several other teams on the way to eventually get into the grand finals, where they took out Newbie 3-0 in the grand finals to become the TI7 champion. So, and oh my God, what a deserving performance it was overall by them. Yes, there were some scary times. In fact, several of the series went the distance of the 3 games, most of them even, other than the grand finals, which they happened to stomp. It's safe to say they rode a wave of momentum into those grand finals, but they no doubt deserved it. I don't know how many games they played in total. It's something like, I want to say it's like 19 games, almost 20 games that they had to play through the main event over a week period. But, all these main stage matches, and then to be able to come out on top and just seeing their reaction and how much it meant to them as players, just how much time they've invested throughout this last year, no doubt to, obviously, this is also a team that at the beginning of the year, this wasn't even actually the team. Of course, GH eventually joined the ranks for them later on into the season. And in a lot of people's eyes, this was a team that had a lot of potential, but really has had struggles within the last year. Now, to be fair, within these last 6 months, they've actually had some pretty damn good results, and of course, very deserving of the invite that they got. No surprise that a lot of people had them going deep, if not winning it all. But even me, I expected good things out of them, but I can't say I sat here thinking that they were going to win the whole thing. Obviously, in hindsight, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. But it's just something about the team. They seemed a little not old there at times. They seemed a little, discombobulated, you could say, I guess, as far as when it came to their play. But ultimately, they deserved it. They went through the grind, and they gained even that many more fans, including myself. I loved watching this team, especially in the main event. But again, it was more than just them. We had some great Dota all around. The Chinese scene especially really represented, despite a Western team winning it in the end to keep the tradition alive of this being an odd year. The Chinese scene has nothing to be disappointed about, in my opinion. I mean, outside of IG Vitality, the Chinese scene did so well. Obviously, you had Newbie finishing second. You had LFY finishing third. LGD finishing fourth on top of that. And then you even had Invictus Gaming in that 5th, 6th place spot to top it all off. So this was a region that, of course, ended up doing very well. And up into the grand finals, I would have thought Newbie for sure was going to win this whole thing. Up until the final day, I should say. Then, of course, Team Liquid, they played LFY, and they looked very good in their defeat, ultimately taken out in 3 games. And then at that point, it's like, all right, Liquid definitely has a shot here. And then they go on to 3-0 it. But up until the final day, I really thought Newbie was going to be our TI7 champions. They looked so good. SCCC, especially as that mid player, seemed like he was going to be the X factor, if anything, on their way to kind of breaking the tradition and becoming the TI7 champion. So, and that kind of leads me into my bad. Whereas the Western Dota scene, overall, a pretty bad performance. Whereas China had a great performance as a team, as not really a team, but as a whole. The Western scene didn't necessarily. Now, to be fair, obviously Liquid won it all, so a Western team ended up winning it. But again, they got knocked down to the losers bracket very early, which kind of set all this up, to be fair, because by them getting knocked down, they then ended up matching up against Team Secret, which it took 3 games to beat. They were down 0-1 against Team Secret. They had to come from behind in the first round of the losers bracket to stay alive. Then they had to knock out Team Empire, who was fresh off their victory over Evil Geniuses. Then they had to beat Virtus Pro. So they ended up having to defeat and knock out 3 Western teams back to back to back. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's a little more understandable. But again, that's just how the brackets played out, and that's because of the earlier results that took place. And then you have the OG situation, which, again, they ended up losing to LGD. They got outdrafted in a lot of ways. They lost that series 2-0, so they finished 7th, 8th place. It's overall an okay performance, but for a team like OG, they definitely expected more, being the 2-time major champions here with their momentum. And again, a team that I picked to win it all. Then you have the other teams like Cloud9 and Digital Chaos, which Infamous even, which maybe finish as you would expected, but still, again, overall, the Western scene definitely struggled. Now, to be fair, and we'll talk about this later on, I think we're going to see a lot of roster shuffling anyways, a lot of changes, whether it's in reaction to the TI7 specifically or just naturally was going to happen. Who knows? But so really this may not matter much in the end but again, if anything, it was surprising because going into this event, I know a lot of people kind of continue to joke about this whole quote unquote tradition of this being an odd year, but there was a lot of reasons to believe that the Western scene overall was going to be a very dominating force here when it came to the TI7 main event. But that wasn't the case. The Chinese scene really showed up and they came to play. Again, only team that did not make it to the winners bracket initially out of groups was IG Vitality. And then those 4 teams ended up finishing in the top 5 here. So now, being the China region, even despite that, I still expect them to also have quite the roster shuffle. That's just what happens over there, it seems like, with players shifting around. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting how the Western scene, looks moving forward here. But again, with the roster changes, really doesn't mean much. But I thought that was worthy of being the bad at least. And then we have the ugly, which kind of leads us into the roster shuffle that I was just talking about there. It's not really like an ugly, a bad ugly. It's just more of let it begin, right? Like from right after teams were getting knocked out to the after party that took place. Like I could say for a fact, not naming names, but there were a lot of players mingling with one another. I'm sure there's a lot of this poaching going on, or potentially, let's make a team ourselves going on, kind of maybe screwing other things up that they maybe have with their own team. So it is an ugly time in a lot of ways when you look at it from that perspective, because especially in the esports world, there's really unfortunately not these binding contracts in the most cases of where a player is unable to be poached or whatever it is, or maybe at least a team would get something like a traditional sport, whether it's a trade that happens at the worst case, something like that. But with how it's set up with esports, and Dota 2 is no different, the year ends, it seems like a free-for-all. It seems like a free-for-all that, the players can go anywhere as they choose. And it does make it for entertainment, and frankly, I kind of enjoy it. But there is part of me that kind of wonders how healthy it is for the scene, the fact that this does happen TI after TI, and it seems like it's going to be pretty radical this year. That, when will we start to really see these contracts really come into place? And But again, we're still not in that spot, to be fair. Valve's still making adjustments, especially when it comes to this tournament system. Obviously, they've made some changes going into this season. That's going to be very interesting, but there's still even more to come. We'll see how that all plays out. But so that would have to be my ugly. And there you go. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Going to be joined by Zrock here, guys. We're going to talk TI7 as well as the roster shuffle. Stay tuned, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, so guys, we are back. We are back from TI officially, and happy to be back. And as I was kind of previewing there in the good, the bad, the ugly, we got plenty to talk about now. Mainly focusing, of course, on recapping TI7 as a whole, what we thought about it, things like players throughout the event that stood out, whatever. But then also start talking about the thing that always happens post TI, the good old roster shuffle that takes place. So there's already information on that. We'll get into it and talk about even possible rumors and what may possibly happen. But of course, going to be joined by Zrock now to have this great discussion with. How's it going, man?
Well, I'm recovering. Every land, you get sick on the way home. You stayed up too long. You might have drank too much. Travel kind of kicked your butt, but we're on the mend, getting a little better, and good to be here.
Yeah, I was kind of lucky when it came to that. I've definitely had that happen before, coming back from a long event, at least not feeling too good like the day after, but honestly felt pretty good. So I happened to avoid that somehow.
This was the best I felt in the flight home from any land I've ever been at, but it's the worst I felt once I got back. So anyway, let's talk about some Dota here.
Yeah, well, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on the stuff here to talk about. The Dota, as you mentioned. TI7 officially over. I mean, obviously, again, both you and I were there. We, of course, were even doing some daily recaps from there. Stopped near the end because, just so caught up with the Dota that was happening. We'd figured we'd save to talk about the last couple of days, especially the event as a whole, until we got back and all settled back in somewhat. And thus, that's why we're here. But it finished up, of course, Team Liquid, the run that they had to take it all in the end. Oh my God, that was something.
What a run.
Yeah.
I mean, losers bracket this early and just to tear back all the way through.
TI7 champion. I can't, not only that, but, I was talking about this with you and many others going into it. Was like the second to last day. Because at that point, it was old China, man. It was old China as far as this event went. And it seemed like it was very possible we were going to have a China versus China finals, a China victory in the end. And not that that's like bad necessarily, but especially with an event being in Seattle and, it would have been nice to have a Western team in the finals, let alone winning it all. And we got
it. I mean, man, I was refreshing Reddit here and there, and the amount of people that are like, oh, it's so racist that everyone doesn't want China to win this or China to have a China versus China final. It's just about having two different sides to root for, right? It built a storyline as it went. Liquid became the last team left that wasn't in the Chinese scene, and so then it built this scene as they started to battle their way through the list. It was like a gauntlet they had to run, and it was just a fun storyline to follow, and to watch it end up going this way was super cool.
Yeah, speaking of that, so it started off with Liquid losing in the winner bracket to Invictus Gaming. And, as I said, and I think one of the recaps after the day after that happened, it's like, should we really be surprised by this? Because, IG is a team that obviously has done very well in this year at times. DAC, they won that event. They did very well in Kiev. They finished top 4, the only Chinese team to do so. Lately, they hadn't been having the best momentum, but, here they were, had a solid group stage run, and now beating Team Liquid. So it's like at that time, it felt like it made sense, right?
Yeah. It was interesting to see because that was a good series. It was one of the better series we had. It was a bunch of games that went to 40 minutes. They went to the semi-late game where lineups got fleshed out. And I thought they played really well on both sides. I have to say Liquid was the only team that had this, like, a bunch of 2-1s. They, like, every series they played and their battle back was close. The only other team to have a single 2-1 in the entire tournament was Newbie. Every other series in the bracket were 2-0s.
God, I'm like looking through now to confirm that, and you're right. Wow, that's I mean, LFY. Well, so LFY did have a
against
couple of
Liquid.
3-game series against Liquid and then against Newbie. Yeah,
Against Newbie, yeah. It was only your winners that took series to 3 games. And this is going to hit an overarching point that I want to talk about right now and relate back to a lot of this. A lot of TI this year came down to coaches. We had a lot of drafts where the captains and the coaches made some kind of odd picks or interesting decisions. And from minute 0, these lineups perform better than the ones where I felt like the coaching might have been a little lacking. Mm-hmm. And like, I gotta say, Heen deserves a lot of respect for what he's done with this team for Liquid here. Yeah, I mean, coaching was a big part of this TI.
Yeah, I know that you definitely have been really strong, especially on Heen specifically for Team Liquid. The coach of Team Secret was the other name that you brought up. But who was it again?
That was Sunby from old Team Freedom, and yeah.
But the impact that they had, the drafting in general, this event, I don't know if you felt the same, but it was kind of weird how it flowed in this event. Like early on, we were kind of seeing it was quite the diversity overall, to be fair. But it seems like stuff that we were seeing early on in the main event, we just weren't seeing at all. Later on in the event, all the way to the finals, it kind of shifted to an extent. So, and maybe that is part of the coaches, though, to be fair, as far as changing things up or adapting.
Yeah, that's what you do at night, right? Your games are done. You go back, you watch every game of the day. You watch the way they drafted. You watch where they put their awards. You break a team down, and you try to basically turn a team into about a 2-page little dossier of this is what they like to pick, this is how they like to play it, and then you come back the next day, and hopefully you're better prepared. I mean, the most clean example we ever had of this was EG versus Newbie 2 years ago, where they found out, oh, hey, they can't play Leshrac, and so they let Leshrac through a whole bunch. And, yeah, it went great. It wasn't Newbie, though. It was... Man, I'm spaced now. It was another Chinese team. CDEC. CDEC was who it was.
CDEC at that time. Yeah.
And CDEC didn't have a Lesh player, and Lesh was broken, so they just let Lesh go through, and it won them the tournament. But it was kind of the same thing, but in a more subtle context here. Like, we saw OG just kind of always seemed to be a step behind. They played super well as a team. They brought their games to 50 minutes when they should have been done at 30. They brought their games to 44 when they could have been done at 15. They really tried to battle back in every series they played, but it just seemed like they were always on the back foot.
It's fun to focus on, continue on more like the storyline standouts that we had in this event. So obviously Liquid winning it all. The run that they had, as you mentioned, I mean, yeah, God. In fact, when you add it all up, what was it? Like they had to play, there's 3 there, 3 at 6, 8.
They played 27 wins, 8 losses in the group stage main event combined.
Well, that would have been combined. Okay, so, but yeah, I'm just even thinking that the main event alone, like if you compare the amount of games they played in the main event, 11, 13, 17, or no, that's 16, and then through the grand finals, so 19 games compared to Newbie, who they met in the grand finals. So they played 19 games. Newbie only had to play 6, 8, and then 11 total, including the grand final. So yeah, that's insane. The amount of matches different that they had to play.
And that's been a criticism of TI a lot, that the loser bracket teams have to just play so many more games and that fatigue might hit them, especially that last day when they're playing that best of 3 into that best of 5. And it's interesting to see one of those loser bracket fatigue teams come back and not only win, but sweep the finals.
Well, that kind of goes to my point now, too, of talking about they got matched up against a Newbie team who, especially going into the grand finals, going into that final day, Newbie looked like the best team there in a lot of ways, and the team that was going to be very difficult to beat and possibly be your TI7 champions. I mean, this is a team that, especially out of China, a lot of people were favoring towards if they had to pick a Chinese team to win it all, if not in general, again, a team to win it all. From S Triple Seed playing how he did to KP and their offlane to across the board, they looked very, very good. And then get swept 3-0, as you pointed out, by Team Liquid in a really dominating grand finals. But up until that point, Newbie seemed like they were going to be TI7 champions. Yeah,
they really did. I mean, if you look, though, go back to the Newbie LFY series, Newbie's drafts were very much set-piece type drafts. They had Bloodseeker all 3 games against LFY. They had Earth Spirit all 3 games. Earth Spirit all 3 games. They kind of had these like set-piece heroes they wanted to run. And Liquid changed up their bans and stuff. They made sure that Newbie had to play new stuff. and it looked like it just threw a newbie fairly off guard.
Yeah, the Moogie Bloodseeker, it never really, impressed me the most. And as you pointed out, the fact they ran all 3 games in the winter bracket finals, and Moogie as a player in general too never really impressed me compared to some of the other carry plays out there. Not to say that he's the reason that they lost in the grand finals by any means, but whenever I think newbie, I definitely think more on SCCC, right? Like he's the focus for that team. But clearly Bloodseeker was a comfortable hero for them. But yeah, even seeing the grand finals, they gave newbie Bloodseeker, not worried about that, and they stomped him in 27 minutes.
And that draft was super cool to watch, because what they ended up doing was making it so that he had it very, very early on. And then they made it so it was extremely difficult for him to lane. So they ended up putting him off lane and like duel off with CM. And his laning phase was just miserable. He couldn't be anywhere. That was the game that Mind Control got like 2 or 3 kills right away and basically just started with phase boots. Mm-hmm. Like, it was insanely quick how fast Mind Control got his start. So then they just had him porting around following Bloodseeker. And while he's not going to win that lane, it's a hero that's very difficult for Bloodseeker to kill. And with that kind of lead, he was able to put some pressure. Like, that was the first Bloodseeker game where Mugi just really didn't look dominant.
Yeah. Yeah, wasn't able to do much, and obviously, again, on their way to losing the series 3-0. But again, at that point, going into the grand finals, newbie looked like they could have possibly been the champions. We're in a good spot to be so.
Sure.
Overall, though, China, even with the way it ended with Liquid having the run that they did, winning it in the end, and keeping the tradition alive, you could say, being TI7 after all, not year. China did look just, again, overall very strong. And
they did.
I admit, I mean, that was a complete shock to me. I stressed going into this, I really felt the trend was going to continue of the year, of the Kiev Major and the Boston Major, where the teams were having shortcomings in these big-time events. But they looked good as a whole, and that's scary moving forward, I think, for the Western scene, if that kind of keeps up.
I mean, it's China steps up at TI. It was one of those things that I didn't play up at all in the pre-shows. I was a little nervous after watching the way their qualifiers went, but every team basically just stepped up from China. And if we want to talk storylines, LFY is insane here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was the team that I don't think anyone really had expectations to for going in.
Absolutely not. I mean, they had a bit of momentum, I guess, because didn't they win an event going into, what was that one? God, now I'm blanking. They matched up against LGD in the finals. I don't know. Did they win?
They had MDL was what that was. They
MDL,
got second,
that's what it was.
It went to 5 games. It was They had some good runs. I mean, they lost to Liquid at Epicenter, but that was for a 3rd, 4th place finish. Then they had a good run at MDL. I mean, they were looking fine, but everyone kind of thought there were weak links. To be honest, for those that don't remember, there were Reddit threads flaming off Fu, saying he needs to be kicked, that he's the weak link of the team. And that was the one guy I was like, you guys can't be serious. This guy is the linchpin of this team. He plays his own game, and it's so different than anyone else. And he showed that.
He made those people look stupid, that's for sure. Yeah, no, he was arguably one of the best players of the whole main event, even though they finished 3rd place overall.
I'm trying to think, if you had, like, if you were picking MVPs by, like, player and hero combos, it'd be tough between GH's Coddle or his Earthshaker as far as the best player-hero combo in the entire tourney.
Kaka's Earth Spirit, I think, was also very good.
Kaka's Earth Spirit was good. I mean, GH just had too many heroes to pick one hero. GH Earthshaker, GH Coddle. I mean, the guy's just nuts, but...
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that later on, too. But, yeah, no, LFY as a whole, again, they only lost 2 games in the group stages, and one of them was at a point of it didn't even matter. I mean, they were playing for nothing at the point. They had 1st place secured, whatever. So this was a very, very good-looking team. And, again, ultimately, they finished 3rd place. Their only losses came to Newbie and Liquid, the teams that were in the grand finals ultimately in the end. So I think LFY has nothing to be excited about, or no, excuse me,
nothing to be excited about.
Nothing to not be excited about, I guess is a better way to put that. They exceeded expectations in a lot of ways, I'm sure. Now, one thing, not to get too negative here necessarily, but one thing I was a little worried about also as the days were going on there, because it was both them and LGD even were having a deep run. there was
API key
that whole drama that came out, within these last months of them having access or Valve not saying anything. I still, that's a whole nother story, but it was going to be unfortunate if that kind of tainted things, because frankly, I don't care, yes, that would be an advantage if that is the case, but again, that's another story. The way they played in-game, though, they would have deserved to go the way.
I did get to talk to a couple of the Valve guys at the after party, and I casually brought it up to one of them, and he said the issue has been resolved for a while now. He wouldn't give me anything more specific than that. It sounds like they don't want to make a public statement about it, but I have to imagine this was handled months ago. It's, they've had access to it for years, apparently, according to the leak, and I don't know. He said it was handled, so I don't know. It would have kind of tainted things, though, just because of how big that blew up. And
there would have been that asterisk, no doubt.
It would have, for sure.
Which, that's why that's the part of me that is kind of glad it played out the way it is, that they finished, getting third place. I still think, people will still bring it up, I'm sure, in the future even, but it would have definitely tainted things if they happened to get the grand finals, let alone won the whole thing. And that would have just been shitty for everyone. So, not the case of the end. Again, getting knocked out by Liquid there in that loser finals, which itself was a hell of a loser finals. LFY getting that first game against Liquid.
That was way more exciting. Well, to be honest, for everyone that said the grand finals were disappointing, they weren't disappointing. We had 3 good games of Dota. The first one was pretty stompy, but the last 2 were good games of Dota. It's just people get upset when it's a 3-0. But that last game was actually nuts. 45 minutes. It was fairly close for most of that game, and 2 big fights with a Necro, and then all of a sudden you win the game.
Yeah, that's one of those cases. You look at the box score, it seems boring. But exactly, us being there in person and anyone that actually watched the games themselves, I think it's hard to suggest that they were just flat out boring games by any means. So I thought it was an entertaining grand finals. Again, I'm a little happier that Liquid won it in the end, so I'm sure that helps a little bit. But
I'm just glad to see Mr. Almost There Kuroki finally close it out. I mean, that guy's tried so hard and so many times, and he keeps getting close, and finally he gets to carry the trophy home. I'm sure he probably slept with that trophy that night. It was snuggled in his bed right there with him.
I wouldn't be surprised, man.
Yeah, I would. I mean... And then GH's interview was super cool. Right after TI, he's just like, I really don't even know what's going on right now. He's like, I can't process this. Yeah. This guy, first TI, he's an extremely new player, and to come in and just win, it's nuts.
So many people focus on the prize pool for good reason. I mean, that's a lot of money. These guys just made $10 million plus playing and winning this event here. $2 million each player, as you do the math there. But at the same time, I think it's safe to say a lot of these it's just that feeling of they're the best, right? Millions upon millions of people play this game. To be able to say that they are the best at doing so, at least within this last year, and now from this event at TI7, as you said, Kuroki especially, being able to hold that trophy finally for how long he's been invested into it. You could tell that meant so much to them as a team, especially like Kuroki and Matoma, man, across the board there. And I'm not going to sit here and say, that meant more than money, because again, money's nice, and that's a lot of money that they got there. But
to the players, though, it does.
Yeah. That's fair.
That's what it comes down to. We see these roster shuffles every year before TI. We see teams winning a major and then roster shuffling right before TI because they want the best shot to win TI. It's the prestige to them. It's being able to come in and say, we were the best team in the world. And that's where, even when OG won all those majors, everyone was kind of just like, can you call them the best team in the world? They haven't actually won a TI.
And now they have. So, yeah, one other thing, too, is the closing ceremonies there.
The champagne?
Bring up awkward moments, but...
The champagne was great. Why would you ever have a Valve employee or their manager there to, open it for them when you can instead have 8 minutes of awkwardness while, Matama Man gets it open and drinks it?
I just don't get why they're... Well, that was my control, actually. He's the one that did that.
Oh, it was my control, okay.
Yeah. I just don't get why they're so insistent on trying to force these non-esport things on esport players, right? Sure, if the NBA Finals, a team wins that, yeah, they have the champagne shower after the fact. Like that, that's just a tradition of theirs. That's what they do. Stop trying to force those traditions on these younger / people that aren't. This is not the life that they usually live, right? They're not old. They don't go to the club after they, win their Dota 2 matches. They don't go, popping champagne bottles. That's not a thing. Like, how did they think that was a good idea?
I mean, I think it could have been okay if Valve set it up right. Like, if they had it all pretty much uncorked, like just the corks left, and just gave them a quick rundown off camera for like 30 seconds on just do this for our film reel. But that was just awkward. They were following them the entire time, and it seems like the players weren't given any notice on what they were supposed to do. It was...
No.
I didn't mind the concept. I think, like, that's a natural reaction, right? If they were told this is how this is supposed to go, they could have enjoyed it, but they were just so lost.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, enough about that, though. Hopefully Valve, they've definitely, they've improved a lot in a lot of ways, but it's still one of the things I think that they're kind of struggling with, the whole after the fact.
Yeah.
The team actually wins. But to be fair, some of it's on the players, too, because, again, it's like sometimes they're just not as emotional or show as much emotion as you maybe hope for, but we did get a bit of true emotion.
Kuroki had a little bit of emotion there.
Yeah. That was nice to see. All right, so now going to kind of from the awkward to disappointing, I guess. Sure. As you talked about earlier, you made the point of OG there. Obviously, they would have to be a team off the bat that you kind of consider, it was a pretty bad disappointment. They got further than last year. Again, a team that I predicted to win it all, if not, do very well. And I know I'm not alone there for good reason. They got knocked out by LGD, but more significantly, I mean, the fact that they were even in the losers bracket from the beginning is what kind of set this all up.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, their games just looked hard. Every game they played, it looked like they had to outplay. They had to try to make something work and kind of dig their way and claw their way back into this. And yeah, after groups and watching them play coming into main event, it was disappointing because I'm an OG fan, but it was not unexpected that they were going to lose to LGD. It really wasn't.
And I think the biggest issue with their match against LGD, and because I don't say this often because I respect Fly and I always have, and I think they did get outdrafted to an extent. And I think the biggest key was the Magnus. They got way too focused on taking the Magnus away from LGD, yet didn't really have the best game plan themselves. I mean, they had a Phantom Lancer Ember Spirit core with the Magnus, which is fine. I mean, Empower is good on those heroes. But then they even forced a Juggernaut in the second game, and Juggernaut's a hero we're just not seeing at all recently in competitive Dota, and I think for good reason. I mean, sure, an Empower buff helps his cause, but again, it just seems like instead of just straight up banning it, they were really trying to force it on themselves to make it work, and that worked to LGD's advantage instead.
And they were banning weird stuff. Like, they were banning AA, which, LGD's first picked AA, but you should have a strategy in mind to play against it. They were banning Kunkka first ban. Like, these aren't considered premium bans in this meta. And that was what they were doing every game. It was just this weird draft style. I don't know. Like, this is what I meant when I said I felt like coaches and captains won and lost this TI. They have Sebastian, who, great player, smart player, and then you had Fly. I thought they would be a little more ahead of the curve with this coming in, but yeah, especially that LGD series, their bans were weird, their lineups weren't very synergistic. It just felt very odd.
Yeah, it's. I think really the best way to put it too is that they were playing not to lose rather than playing to win.
Sure.
Again, just by reacting to the other team rather than saying, you know what, we're the better team. We're going to play our game and beat you because of that. So, which I think they could have definitely done. I mean, LGD is a good team, but it's definitely not unbeatable. So,
I think I felt like a part of that came in the fact that if you look back to any time OG won a big tournament, they always had set pieces they liked to run. They had 2 hero combos. They had, most notoriously, Alchemist, Tree, and Phoenix, like as a 3-piece. They always had these things you had to keep in mind when you were playing against them, and Liquid had that this time. I mean, they had Coddle, they had Earthshaker, they had all these heroes, Wisp, that if you let these through, you're going to lose. And I didn't feel like any of those existed for OG this tournament at all. They didn't have like their strategy at any point in this tournament.
Winter Wyvern was the only standout for me, but that wasn't even really that good at times, to be fair. So, yeah, that was kind of their somewhat unique. And other teams were starting to pick up as like a Sven counter, if anything. But
yeah,
no, I agree with you as my point.
Length.
Yeah, well, that's didn't work too well. So OG dropping out there again, pretty disappointing result, and like both you and I definitely agree that the drafting, as shocking as it is to say, definitely fell short right there. So, God, I mean, I just imagine the brackets, if they played their game, beat LGD, beat IG, them versus Liquid in the loser semifinals, wouldn't that have been something? But it's not how it played out, so can't say that.
No, you can't.
LGD instead going all the way, then losing to Liquid there. And then we know what happened beyond that. All right, another disappointing team. How about that? We got not the OG, we got EG, Evil Geniuses. This to me was even more surprising, to be fair. Like, this was definitely more disappointing than OG. I mean, they lost to Empire. How does that happen?
Yeah, the newbie losses I can respect. They lost to the finalists. They played their Dota. They drafted their picks. They picked a lineup they've won with before and still fell short. But the Empire series was something, man. And again, it goes back to, we have a draft that we think beats your draft, so we're going to let you have most of your draft. And then they just couldn't beat that AA Sven. They just had no chance against it. They looked dead basically the entire time. I mean, yes, one of the games went to 52 minutes, but wow. EG just came up so short. That was the disappointment of the tournament for me, by far.
Winter Wyvern support once again, trying to make that work in both games as that Sven counter, and not to say that was the reason they lost by any means, but it proved to maybe not be as good as people thought it was. Losing that's just embarrassing. For a team that expect a lot of people, for good reason, expected to go all the way. If not, at least finish top 3, right? Because again, these last 3 years they've been either third place or, of course, first place in TI7. And
the biggest thing for this, and the big question mark to me on this series, was this draft had to be something EG had ready that they wanted to run. These had to be picks they chose ahead of time, basically, instead of, we can get this lineup or picking this lineup, because Wisp wasn't banned either game against them. And they just didn't take it. That is like one of those things that, Wisp gets through? All right, we got 2 Wisp players, let's go.
Yeah.
And to never see it come out in a 2-0 loss, something was weird there. I don't know what it is, but I just couldn't believe that we never got to see an EG Wisp in either of those games against Empire.
I do think a little bit is you do have to look at it from the perspective of Empire as well, where, again, ever since they, especially beating Cloud9, I mean, anything like they're just playing just to have fun. Like, obviously, they wanted to win, of course, but this is a team that had no pressure on them. I mean, they're already playing with a ringer and resolution. They're just playing to, be these upsets, the dark horse team going on through. So there was that advantage, you could argue, for them, where on the other side of it, EG has all the pressure in the world. And, somebody like Crit being the drafter and the captain of the team, on top of that, has even more. I would believe that probably played an issue too. I mean, being on the main stage and everything.
It's almost like the Infamous thing, right? That when a European team plays against Infamous, they don't know how to play, because it's a team they've never scrimmed against, the style of Dota they've never really played against. I felt like Empire could almost be akin to that, where we just haven't had to play enough games against them. We haven't seen them in enough big events, and the replays aren't there against T1 teams to watch. And I feel like that could have been a part of it. Yeah, kind of, as you said, just this huge dark horse in the tournament.
So EG, I'm sure for a lot of people, probably the biggest disappointment overall.
Yeah, we're gonna see changes there, though.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later on. We've stayed away. I mean, obviously we got the OGs to do. Yeah, we got that to talk about, guys. We're not just overlooking that fact, but we want to kind of finish recapping TI as a whole here first before we start talking about all that roster shuffling. And then, I mean, for me at least, what I put on this list here, I mean, as we said on the positive side, Chinese Dota overall looking very strong. So I think you kind of just naturally have to suggest the Western scene overall very disappointing. I mean, of course, Liquid won it all, so yes, that's good. But outside of Liquid, it was a pretty disappointing tournament for the Western scene.
Definitely was. And we kind of hit the two big letdowns, though, right? I mean, those were kind of the two big hopes were EG and OG. Secret maybe, but Secret got put against Liquid literally right away. So,
and they took them to 3 games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, they won the first game. That's right. Geez, Secret was up 1-0 against Liquid. Liquid was down 0-1 in the loser second round. They came back to win the whole tournament.
That's a storyline, man. That's a run right there.
That is
and then
insane.
You had their VP series was nuts too. They had that super long, like 100-minute game, and then just instantly dropped the next one in like 30 minutes and had to battle back for a game 3.
Yeah. That was, I mean, that is a fair point. Like you said, with Secret and with Virtus Pro, you got to look at the big picture. They were both knocked out by the eventual champions, and in this case, Team Liquid. So maybe the Western scene wasn't overall as disappointing as suggested because DC, losing to LGD, like that's not really surprising, right? Infamous, of course, losing to OG in the beginning, not surprising. TNC, but again, TNC lost to LFY and then OG. So, yeah, it's how do you sit here and say, oh, that's disappointing? So,
well, it's TI. I mean, that's the way this goes. Every team's playing against the good team. Really, you have your 1 or 2 dark horses that maybe won a series or just kind of went out how they were expected to go out, and then you have the best of the best. I mean, no one can feel bad about losing to any of these teams from about the top 8 on.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what I think would be fun to do next is go over what we thought as far as like some fun awards here.
Sure.
Kind of going through the event now. We've already hinted at a couple of players. Well, starting with like the big one, right? Like starting with the big one here, the MVP of the tournament. If you had to give an MVP trophy to a player,
GH,
it would be GH for you. Yeah,
instantly. Yep. Oh yeah. He was just so enabling. He forced multiple bans every single game. He was a dominant force in everything except like the few Night Stalker games he got thrown on. But anytime he got any other hero, he just ran the game. It was his show.
4 positions in general were like that was the big storyline I think of the event too. Was the 4 position players on most teams were the star players. It wasn't the mid. It wasn't the carry. It was the 4 position, because you mentioned GH. Obviously, we mentioned Kaka. We mentioned Afu earlier. There's more that definitely are there. So, I think that definitely is kind of, and I like that because these 4 position heroes and players are of these very aggressive style, fun to watch most of the time. But as far as who my MVP would be, I actually go Mind Control. I go more Mind Control because I do kind of agree that GH, as far as teams having to kind of react to him and banning out his heroes, and yes, that is significant. But I think when it really mattered most in both the loser finals and definitely in the grand finals, Mind Control, especially his Nature's Prophet.
Yeah, that first game of grand finals, they could have very easily lost that game, and Mind Control just split his way to Arax after they lost a fight, and then he was on my list for an MVP, but he did just enough things to throw for them that it kind of offset the great things he did. Like, yeah, he took a rack splitting, and then he really wanted to finish a ranged rack, so he poured it in and just died without getting it. Like, he was great. I mean, overall, solid player for them. He just did a couple of those, what you doing, buddy? Like, just odd plays.
Well, I mean, I just look at the LFY Team Liquid series especially, and I remember that first game, and kind of reminded myself looking at the draft now too. That first game, that was the game where LFY's like, we're not going to ban GH heroes, we're going to ban other stuff. And so Liquid kind of fell into this trap, you could say, of, well, let's get both Earthshaker and Coddle. And so they gave Mind Control Earthshaker, and of course had GH play as Coddle. And it did feel a little off. It felt like, Mind Control's Earthshaker wasn't maybe as relevant, whether that's the position or just him not being as comfortable. Whatever the case, LFY ended up winning that game. But then the next two games, they give him Nature's Prophet. And again, both of those games, he did phenomenal in and arguably helped lead them to victory to get to the grand finals in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. And that game was so interesting, by the way, that first LFY game, because Matumbo Man almost pulled them back with the Ags Lone Druid. Like, that bear was trying to be a hero.
I'm surprised we haven't seen that more, man. That was pretty ridiculous.
It just takes so much farm, and Lone Druid's outside of the first couple levels where he essentially has a very large creep that can beat on your face in lane. Then he hits this trench where he just does nothing for like 5,000 gold. Mm-hmm. And it's usually too much dead time, but I get what you mean. But in reality, yeah, sure, when Mind Control was on NP, he was very big, but GH never even got to play Wisp this tourney. I think it was first banned every single game.
Yeah.
Like, that alone is an impact player. And then coupled with the fact that his hero pool was too deep to even ban in the first phase. I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. I think both are good choices, but GH is definitely mine.
Isn't it kind of funny that we're sitting here saying GH and Mind Control, yet this is a team with Miracle and Matumba Man and Kuroki, for God's sake. Yeah, we're sitting here giving it to these guys.
Mechanically,
this team was amazing.
I thought this was the worst captain mechanically I've ever seen win a TI. I think he was brilliant. I think he made very great calls. He won the games for his team through captaining and drafting, but it reminded me a lot of when EG won 2 years ago and PPD was stuck basically playing Dazzle the whole time and just kind of died a lot. I mean, his Spirit Breaker was super underwhelming. He would just charge in and die without even ulting half the time. And mechanically, I did not think Kuro played very well. Mm-hmm. But if you have the right team behind you and you're making the right calls, that's fine. That's how you play. He was playing chess Dota.
Yeah. And that's sometimes what you need out of your support, not necessarily to exactly play this mechanical game like crazy, but he needs to be your thinker. He needs to be your shot caller, and he needs to be your drafter, and he has those strengths taken care of. So
I think that's one of the reasons Lich paid off so well in this tourney. Like, Lich was found to be okay enough that he was pickable. It's a low mechanically intensive hero, and it's something you have a little time to think about. Like, when do you want to chain Frost? Other than that, you're just pressing Q on a low HP target or something you need to slow and Frost armoring buildings. It's a very cut and dry hero, so it leaves the rest of his time open to watch the rest of the game, know when heroes are hitting items, know where there's wards. It just lets you think about so much more.
What about if it couldn't be someone from Liquid? Who would be your MVP if it wasn't from Liquid? So you would go with Afu then? Okay.
Yeah. If I have to go away from a 4 roll, it's probably SCCC, but
that was going to be mine, honestly.
So build enabling. Like, I loved Afu because he played unlike anything I've seen ever. Like, his play almost reminded me of E in the fact that I wouldn't have made half the plays he did. But if I stop, think back, and think of it in a different mindset, okay, yeah, that's probably better than what I would have done. Or that was, I got your thought process. Maybe it didn't play out the way you planned, but I understood what he was thinking. And the way he thinks about a game on the fly is just so different from anyone else.
He seems like a really cool guy too. He's the one that had whenever they introduced the teams, he had like a skateboard in one hand, he had like a backwards baseball cap on. The guy just looked fucking cool, man. He looked like that guy you just wanted to hang out with in high school all the time. So he has that going for him too, I guess.
Indeed.
Well, yeah, understandable. But yeah, as I was saying, I think SCCC actually would have to be mine then if it couldn't be on Liquid. And maybe because honestly, Newbie reminded me a lot of how Team Secret plays, where Team Secret relies all on mid one, right? Where mid one's kind of their carry in a lot of ways. MP just happens to be there filling in that one position role. Not anymore. We'll talk about that later. As far as Newbie goes, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Mugi is a very underwhelming carry in the sense that he's not this flashy carry. He's kind of just there. He does his job, sure, but he's not, the one winning you games a lot of the time. It's usually SCCC. And I think for the run that Newbie had, especially beating LFY, a very, very strong team to get to the grand finals in the first place. His Storm Spirit play in that winter bracket finals, he ended up with like 34 Bloodstone charges at the end. That was
just
insane,
a few.
So
just a few.
Wait, was that? Hold on, that was the earlier, because I'm looking at the winter bracket. That was against IG. That's right. But point is, he did have a phenomenal series in there and just all across the board. So he was kind of that star player, standout player for newbie, no doubt. I'd have to choose him. All right. Here's another fun one now. So let's do this here. As far as like they do kind of an NBA and everything, you know, the first all team or first team NBA, in this case, first team TI7. Who would be now? I want to throw a curveball here because you can only have one player from a team.
Okay.
So it can't be like multiple liquid, multiple newbie, whatever. Only one player from a team. So if you could have your perfect team from the way they played at TI7, how would your team shape up?
Let's go down the order then. SCCC's my mid. My carry is going to be... this one's hard. I'll take Ramses as my carry. My 3 position... Man. I'll take 11. Probably 11. 4 position's going to be GH. And my 5... I'd take Fly.
Take Fly, okay.
I think, just as a quick why, SCCC was the most dominant mid laner in here by far. I think that's not even a question. And I don't even think it's necessarily because the team plays around him. I think after 20 minutes or so they do. But for the most part, he's self-sufficient and just wins. He's just really strong in that role. Carry players, pretty interchangeable to me, in all honesty. Most of the carries here are extremely strong. There are a couple exceptions, but... for the offlaners, 11 was just good, and I couldn't put mind control if I wanted GH. So
exactly.
GH for obvious reasons. And then for captains, I still think Fly is one of the best captains out there. And yeah, I think people would respect him, and he's one of those kind of bring people together kind of people.
So for me, my God, I don't know. My mid player, yeah, SCCC. My 3 position, I actually would go mind control, so I would take him.
Yep.
And then my 4 position, I would go with Afu. So it's kind of a nice trade off right there. God, my carry. You know, the funny thing is, I want to almost say Resolution as my carry.
I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, because you went with Ramses, and obviously that's a good pick too. So yeah, I would probably go with Resolution. Just again, what he was able to do with Empire.
Farm, man. Those Russians can farm.
So he would be my 1, and then my 5 position, yeah, I would go with Fly as well. Him or 1437.
Yeah, that's fair.
There too, but yeah, I would go with Fly. All right, cool. Nice little twist there. Because yeah, if you say it's just overall, then I assume it would be mainly from Liquid and Newbie, right? Like, it's what you got: SCCC, you got GH Mind Control, Kuroki for 5, and then who would your 1 be then? I guess you would say Mutumba Man?
I couldn't say Mutumba Man because they flex. Mutumba Man and Miracle are both 1-2s, so I couldn't pick one without the other, or your lineup gets weird.
I guess you could do Monet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Too theoretical. Not enough practice there. Okay. Moving on, because I like the next point, because this one's fun to me.
What is the next point? Best series?
Yeah,
let's do that.
VP
Best
Liquid.
series.
By far, VP Liquid. That was one of those things that I was up at the beer garden with some people. We watched the start of that game. I had to go talk to a few people I hadn't seen yet. I come back, and it's like an hour later, and it's still game 1. So then I'm just drawn in. I'm like, all right, fine. We're watching this till the end. And it was still another 20 minutes before it was over. And then the battle back, VP taking a game and forcing it into game 3 after that long of a game. That was my favorite series by far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember that game 3 being damn close as well. It's a 46-minute victory for Team Liquid.
Yeah, it came down to just like, there was a push in the base by Liquid, and they found a go on the Ancient Apparition, and he kind of, as I so eloquently worded, he squidded his ultimate. It's like, you know, when an octopus gets scared and he just inks all over.
Yeah.
So he just kind of threw it in a random direction right as the Void chronoed someone else. And if the AA Blast was on point there, and they'd communicated, probably a different game. It goes at least 10 minutes longer. Maybe VP swings it back. But it came down to one insane base fight. and really was the reason Liquid moved on. So that's my favorite series.
Yeah, no, I would lean towards that one. Maybe the LFY versus Liquid series as well, the losers bracket finals. Like I said earlier, I thought that was a very interesting draft. That the way it started with the whole them taking the Urshik Ricardo, kind of playing a lot of mind games there. And overall, very clean play though. The Morphling by LFY, Monet's Morphling in that final game, it actually got pretty scary for Liquid, to where they could have definitely won that and been going to the grand finals instead. So, with so much being on the line and being the final day of the tournament, that would have to be my...
Yeah, I was sitting up in the upper stands just screaming. I'm like, as soon as he picks up that Ethereal Blade, this game's going to get spooky. And he gets it, and then he gets a triple kill, instantly as he picked it up. And I'm just like, oh boy. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I remember the game, that was too... Because Super ended up getting to play Death Prophet, which, again, is just... I don't know why teams like Death Prophet so much. It just felt like another just kind of underwhelming hero as a mid, especially.
The Chinese teams used it so well, though, in a lot of this tournament, where every exorcism was impactful. It's just a very high-risk hero. If the first, 2 exorcisms don't do anything, it falls really flat. But if you can use those to get towers, maybe force a team fight or two, it can come out really, really strong. And it pairs well with something like a Morphling that takes a lot of time to come online.
Yeah. God, that Morphling, too. Speaking of that, that's right. I mean, the advantage was actually in favor of Liquid this whole game. Kind of look at the net worth graph, but it actually dipped pretty low again by the late game. But I remember Morphling actually having a very slow start as well. But again, he was just constantly farming and it was like after a horrible start, we're just like, this could actually be a quick victory. And then he somehow found the farm. And like I said, he finally got the F play, got that triple kill. And it's like, oh crap, Liquid's in some trouble now. But enough. That's Sunders from Miracle playing the Terrorblade. Remember a couple of those being pretty clutch.
Indeed.
Oh, and then, GH on Rubik, he stole a couple of exorcisms throughout the game. I do remember that,
A lot of them. Every fight, it's just nuts. It's just I see these ghosts filling the screen.
One, yeah.
Yep.
He was using it better than the Death Prophet, it seemed like.
Oh, he was nuts.
Well, so Liquid squeezed by there, and then they rode that wave, that's for sure, into the grand finals.
That they did.
And taking it over Newbie, so, yeah. Those are definitely some standout ones. I mean, you're right. Kind of looking back, there was a lot of 2-0 series. There was mostly 2-0 series. So,
yep.
That is interesting how it played out that way. And then again, the grand finals being 3-0. So I could see why people may suggest overall the event maybe wasn't as exciting as they hoped for. But I don't know. Being there in person, I felt it. It was hype, and I was pretty hyped throughout most, if not all, the events. So.
As someone who was there for the early days in main event, I'm very glad for 2-0s because there's a lot of Dota in any given day. And when they go 3 deep, then you're in the arena till 10, 11, midnight. It gets to be a very long day.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. But that was a little awkward, I will say, for the final day, because we were done by 6:30.
Yeah, the after party's at 9, and it's just normally we're done with grand finals at 9:15, so you just go straight over there. And this time it was we got 2 hours.
Yeah, I went and ate dinner, chilled a little bit. That was nice. So, and then the good old after party.
Oh, the after
pumping. Party. That was fun.
Oh, the after party.
Let's not talk too much about the after party.
Always a good time when people just get to relax and have fun and not worry about working once everyone's done. Yeah.
It's a fun environment. It's it makes you realize constantly. It's there's more than than just playing Dota, sitting on the main stages. No, they're all just normal people in the end.
One note of the after party, PPD's tweet was amazing, where he's anyone that gave me a business card last night, they're in the garbage.
That guy, man, he sometimes I chuckled at that, but for being in his position, I don't know.
But that's not a place of business. You had the whole week for meetings.
Well, yes and no, man. Because to be fair, when do you ever have access to a guy like PPD? During the week, the dude is not only was he on the panel, but players and stuff and talent like that, they don't want to be constantly seeing these people during the week, right? So I get both sides. I think there is part of the after party where people will use that for connections and business connections. Whether or not you take yourself,
you have a drink and then you just hit them up after it. You don't hand them a business card and dive into a proposal.
Well, to be fair, who says that they were doing that? I don't know. I like I said, I see both sides. I think that I laughed at the tweet. I thought it was funny. But again, there's part of me that thinks as the position that he's in, maybe shouldn't be. He was quick to apologize. I will say that he was make it clear what he meant.
A little too much backlash from it.
Yeah.
But, all right. Moving forward past the after party.
Notable standouts I have here. I guess just anything else worth pointing out.
I think we kind of hit them all, honestly.
Yeah, as far as teams and stuff goes.
I think a lot of the next section is going to be the same way.
Fun to see Infamous on the main stage there at least. Tomato did great on the panel. I think that was cool they had him on.
No, I got to talk to Tomato a lot this week, and his dad as well. And I mean, just super cool people. And that kid has a bright future if he positions himself well.
I noticed how we didn't mention anything about Cloud9 either.
I would rather not. I mean, in all honesty, very disappointing result for them. They're not where they want to be. There's no talk yet officially, but I mean, the rumors were flying. Some of the players even were making them themselves that there's going to be a new team. It's going to be a new NP, but the C9 sponsorship was just for TI. It was a contract gig. It ended the day the main event ended. So C9 no longer C9. I believe there's plans to still keep NP as an organization together, but it will more than likely be quite a different roster.
Yes, as will several rosters. But again, before we get into that, I guess one last topic to talk about TI7 is more the stat side, as well as like just heroes as well. I mean, we've already hinted at a couple of things here, but
yeah, we beat a lot of these to death. The high impact hero part especially, but
yeah.
I mean, top picks and bans, it was Earthshaker, Nightstalker, Nyx, Wisp. It was all the 4 roles, basically. Those
Bat
were
Rider was
the
very
premiums.
popular offlane.
And didn't win that much.
Yeah, that's true. He kind of felt a little lackluster at times.
It was odd, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, what was Bat Rider's win rate here? Because I know he got picked. Yeah, he was sub 50%. Sand King was the most picked, worst win rate.
Okay.
By a long shot. Almost every time, it seemed like teams were trying to use it in place of Earthshaker. Like, they would get the Earthshaker banned, but they'd want a stunner with some AoE, so they'd pick Sand King up, and it plays totally differently. Earthshaker, before he gets blinked, can just fish around the outskirts of a fight and do something and then not die. And that's progression towards a Blink Dagger. Sand King doesn't really have that luxury. If he goes in, he's in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to sort by... Okay, here we go. For some reason, I couldn't get like the main event stats specifically.
Yeah, it's hard. Our stats are not great at the moment.
So yeah, Earthshaker was the top pick there. Okay, yeah. Sand King, that's embarrassing, man. 17% win percentage. Ouch. In 17 games. Not a successful hero. What was Winter Wyvern, by the way?
Didn't win a game, dude.
He was
not win a game.
That's right. Oh, God.
And honestly, I don't think it's because it's a bad hero. I think people are still just playing it wrong. And I talked to a couple people in the scene about it, and they kind of agreed with me afterwards that how they picked it did not match up with how they played it. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not worth picking. That's still up for debate, but we haven't seen it with a bunch of mobility. We haven't seen it with a blink or a force staff. For everyone just went Glimmer, and then it couldn't get a spell off before it died. So definitely disappointing, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the odd standouts to me was Necro. It got picked 13 times, had a positive win rate. It actually got pretty scary. It was getting banned against Liquid a couple times and got banned against CG once.
That hero, man, it's like you think you have the kill and then you don't. And it's one of those two as an observer. It's hard to, I say this a lot for some heroes, but it's hard to understand truly how much he's doing, because those Reaper Scythe kills as well, those add up. You know, even if it's just the 10 seconds initially extra longer on those respawn times, that's that much more time that you're not on the map. If you're carry, farming, if you're support, getting the wards down, get into like whatever it is, and then obviously up to 30 seconds at level 3 of the ultimate. You're taking people out for really long times in the late game.
Well, and if you get like a farming carry, you can quantify that down. The 30 seconds of added time, you knock 500 gold off of them. You know, you can actually break that down to a gold amount, not even counting the map control and pushing out creeps. It's super impactful. And the subtleties of Necro are insane. Like, we saw a lot of times Necro got gone on. I can remember one fight up near a dire tier 1 tower. Necro gets gone on, has like 10 health left, and gets a Ghost Shroud full wand off, and is like over half health.
That's so
just
broken.
Instantly. It was insane.
That alone is so broke, because you're right. It's the wand Ghost Shroud combo is ridiculous, and then you throw a Death Pulse on top of there. It's like, he'll be 3/4 life, if not even full life, in the early games. So.
Yeah, and if you have like a Dark Seer with a mech, it's literally full life. It's just nuts.
It's pretty ridiculous. So
it's a high risk, high reward hero. That's the thing.
Yeah, it seemed like it worked out overall pretty well. Dazzle was a popular support, not really surprising there though. To me, again, kind of just we talked about, but Lich was really the very interesting hero for me that just all of a sudden exploded at TI7. I'm still not even sure why. I'm really like I've always seen Lich as a very niche hero, anti-physical damage, if anything. Lane control is great, but I mean, was that maybe the biggest reason?
That was the biggest reason.
Yeah.
It destroys Bloodseeker. That's one of the biggest reasons. In lane, slowing down Bloodseeker 6, making sure he's always a level behind you is super important. And then you can apply a little bit of pressure with Frost Blast. You have Ice Armor to peel him off a little bit. It just destroys Bloodseeker, which ended up becoming a pretty important pick in TI in the later stages. So I do think what ended up happening and the reason it got picked as much as it did was LFI's dominant run with it. They just didn't really lose games with Lich over and over. And so then teams were trying to watch their replays, trying to replicate it, and they weren't quite comfortable with it. So some teams did fall flat. I mean, it was a sub 50% win rate hero, but it definitely flexed its muscle, especially for teams where the captain, as I said, needs to be a bit more cerebral and guide his team a little more, because it's an easier hero to play mechanically.
I was also kind of, maybe not hoping, but expecting perhaps a little more Arc Warden appearances. He's only seen once in the main event. But so many cores I felt like were spamming this hero going into TI.
It was
the
a test.
Games that they're playing.
It failed.
We saw it once, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Eternal Levy ran it, right? Yeah, he ran it for Cloud9 there in their best of 1 series. So, and then we did get to see Abed's Meepo once. Obviously,
we did get to see Abed's Meepo. And it didn't look like Abed's Meepo. I mean, it wasn't the explosive controlling force that we were hoping to see.
No. Yeah, LGD actually. Yeah, they also had to go from their early losers bracket there. Beat DC, OG, IG, and then obviously lost to Liquid. And just kind of looking at the brackets there with DC. All right, well, I think that pretty much covers the bases, though. Again, we talked about plenty throughout the week 2 with the recaps there, but as far as the hero stats worth going over. So that was TI7 as a whole. Overall, again, I think both you and I agree, a very good event as far as experience being there. You know, Liquid winning it, keeping the tradition alive, the Western team winning it this year. So look out for China next year. But even despite that, Chinese Dota looked very strong at TI7. And that'll be interesting to see how that carries over now going into the new season ahead of us. But speaking of that, the new season ahead of us, as usual, post-TI, boy, are there changes set to happen, and there's already some that have happened, in fact, as far as roster shuffle going on. To start things off, first thing I'll say, I've never been involved. I've never been, obviously really involved in one of these because, again, I joined the scene technically after last TI happened, as the new season had already started. But from my understanding, last year was maybe somewhat mild with roster changes. This year is supposed to be pretty big. There's all that I've been hearing, just from the players that I got to talk to just like yourself, to just others, management, whatever. That's the similarity, is that this is going to be a crazy offseason.
Everyone has no idea how this next season's going to play out, and I would like to stay away from the format until the next podcast a little bit, and we can bring up major, minor, that whole thing. We got a lot of content we could do there, but no one knows how this is going to work, actually. The actual point totals, the way it's going to decay, no one knows. So everyone at this point is still trying to figure out and just get a team that they're going to feel comfortable with going forward. They don't want any tension. I think we're going to see a lot more friend-type teams, a lot more just people to get along with each other because they may be in it for the long haul.
So, speaking of these possible changes that are to come, but some that already have happened, pretty much the day after, Team Secret being one of the first teams, if not the first really bigger team out there to announce some changes. Kazoo and MP officially out of the team, so no offlaner, no carry player currently. Now, apparently they already have their replacement set up, but they aren't announcing it yet.
Mm-hmm.
They did there was a clue given by Kazoo in his blog post that he made, as he usually does. He's good with those. That the players on Secret now, the new players, are not going to be players that have been on before. So, people had some ideas in mind. People like Zai, came to mind, Arteezy even, and it's like, well, no, that's not going to be the case, apparently, from what we're given. First off, I want to start, though, with Kazoo and MP out. Like, what do we think of that as far as that happening?
I think MP's always kind of been quiet on that team. He hasn't had a lot of fanfare. He hasn't really been the face of the team at all. I think he was a perfectly fine carry player for them, but it just didn't seem like he was part of the team in the same way. Not surprised to see him go. Kazoo definitely a little bit more interesting to me, but I think we're going to see a lot of offlaners available at the moment, so I can't say I'm surprised.
MP, I agree with you, and again, I've not been afraid to suggest that I think that he's kind of been the weak link of Team Secret as a whole. Whether that's fair or not, it's just what I see. So him being released, not surprised to see them looking for a new carry, especially with the potential that could be out there as far as candidates. Kazoo, again, with you, this was a little more surprising to me, especially when from what my understanding is that they want to get somebody maybe with a little bit more experience. Kazoo is overall somewhat of a newer player to the scene, sure, but he's also a 2-time TI competitor now, and he's been on several big name teams, including this one. I find that to me just sounds odd. Like what? And then you got Liquid, for example, as we're just sitting here. GH, Mike Troll even. I guess Mike Troll's been around a little bit, but GH specifically. This is his first year competitive Dota, and he's known as the MVP in a lot of people's minds. Like, I just don't see that as a legitimate reason. Something tells me there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes. And I will say, when I talked with Kazoo at the event, he was doing some autograph session, and I got to catch up with him after. He kind of looked at me, and he's like, "You got to talk with my team later on because there's some changes going on." And then, now this was before we knew this news came out. And so I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, there's going to be some changes probably. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Obviously, now we know what the case is, but something tells me that, maybe things weren't the best behind the scenes, basically.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I have a feeling that any of these captains that have been around as long as Puppy, they have a plan in mind, basically, from day one when they get knocked out. Like, okay, this is what I want to do going forward. They start running around and talking to other teams as they start ending. This ends up being a huge social thing, where teams are meeting off in pairs and threes and kind of planning things going forward, literally from like the day they get knocked out.
Yeah. I think this is more of like, it's the case of Kazoo's not a bad player. It's just, in this case, probably Puppy. Of course, he happened to find somebody that he's more comfortable with. And so he's just getting the short end of the stick in that sense. So Kazoo, I think, as a player, he's going to find a new home. He'll be just fine. MP, I'm not as confident in, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if he gets picked up by a decent team, whether or not he goes, to Southeast Asia or tries to find something in Europe or elsewhere, but we'll see.
We'll have to see. I mean, if the Korean scene still had a big MVP team, I could see him easily dropping back on that, but doesn't really exist anymore. So yeah, we'll have to see where he fits.
So now that's kind of leads into the likely replacement ideas. You want
my honest thoughts? Okay. They're really off the wall. Mind Control and Matoma Man. I don't think Liquid will stay together.
I just don't even know how to react to that. I mean, well, is there a reason you're saying this, or is this completely just you just feeling it?
Mostly the length of time Kuroki has had a roster that stays together, whether they win or lose something. I just don't see him staying with this roster. I think.
Yeah, but he hasn't won TI before.
You're not wrong, but he also hasn't been on a team for more than other than the time he was getting extremely overpaid on Na'Vi, Liquid's the longest he's ever been on a team, and they've gone through tons of players. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. I don't think it can be Universe, who I think was one of the more likely offlane candidates. I think EG is going to rebuild around Universe. Maybe Sumail comes in as their carry.
Ooh.
Look at the pool of people. Like, OG, with the announcement that Ana is leaving, didn't straight up announce that their last four are staying together, but if there was already plans for that not to be the case, they would have just announced that all in one post.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can not safely say, but we can have some expectation that OG's keeping their four outside of Ana. And really, who's left? I know, like, C9's roster, like...
What about Resolution?
Maybe
that's the name that honestly I feel like if I had to take a guess here, I think Resolution and Moon Meander are the two players that come to mind. I think Moon
is going to DC.
You think he's going to DC? Okay.
I'm not sure about this. I mean, a lot of what I hear is just, players joking around and messing with each other and BSing. But I know Envy and MSS and Moon were all talking about what could happen and who is playing with who. And I don't know. Maybe it's Moon. That actually wouldn't be a bad choice. I just don't think personality-wise they fit very well.
I mean, Moon's played for Swinamelons before, so
yes,
I think when it comes to an aggressive captain, he has that.
Very, very true. There's one other one I was curious about. So my issue with Rezo is his English is not great. It's actually fairly poor.
Really?
And he can say hi to you. He can hold a basic conversation. And I guess in Dota you can communicate in 2-word sentences if you have to. But I just have this feeling like the way Puppy likes to talk to his team, he likes to have conversations with them. He likes to discuss things with them. And yeah, I mean, Rezo would be a great option for them. I also think Rezo is going to be hounded by Empire. He's going to be hounded by Na'Vi. He's going to be hounded by literally every organization that can afford him.
Yeah.
The offlaner is the weird one, though. I don't know what offlaner you could pick up that's going to viably be available.
I almost wanted to say... Well, so actually, what about this now? Because I was going to say Faith Beyond, but he is now part of eHome, technically. However, Shadow is not a part of a team.
Wings?
From Wings.
For their carry player?
For their carry player. Because I've heard the possibility that some of these Wings players may be looking to go elsewhere outside of China. And he's one of these.
Interesting. That actually could be really cool.
Yeah.
I've always been a little nervous about Shadow because their TI run, he played a ton of Void. He played a ton of Lincoln's Rushing Void. He had his niche, right? It was like GH Coddle Shaker this tourney. He was one of the least versatile players, but one of the most dominant there. I would love to see him on a team and see how he is when he gets with a team that's going to pick him other stuff and make him flex around a little more. And yeah, that would be cool. I'd be excited to see that.
So Moon Meander to DC, huh? So wait, that leaves who's their current? Is it Firo? So he's
their
he
offlaner?
would be no longer. Yeah,
their offlaner was Forev on DC.
Forev, yeah. Okay, interesting.
We'll have to see. Moon's one of those players that's just been getting passed around and on a bunch of different rosters and really struggling to find a team that makes it fit. And I think he had almost the worst case scenario last year where he came into DC trying to replace Moo, coming off of Moo's huge run, and then they didn't really win much. And I think that gave a lot of players a bit of a negative opinion of him, that he was trying to ride his way into a team and then underperformed a little bit or whatever you want to say. And in reality, it was just totally different play styles. Moo liked to play carry offlaners. Moon likes to make space. So we'll have to see. I honestly think predicting where people are going to go until we at least know who all is available is extremely difficult.
Yeah, no, we don't, because like what? Okay, let's put it this way then. What teams right now are we confident is going to stay the same roster? I mean, you're not even confident Liquid's going to stay. Like Virtus Pro for me is probably the one team that comes to mind.
VP already tweeted that there's no disband.
Yeah, well,
for sure.
But
disband doesn't necessarily mean no roster changes. Yeah. But the only player I could see them wanting to change would be like Ramses for Rezo, but they just bought Ramses from Empire and it cost them a lot of money. So
and they just announced their new contracts and everything. Not that that means a lot, to be fair, but I think it means something.
Yeah. So. I think it's a fairly safe bet that core will stay intact. I think OG's core is a fairly safe bet to stay intact. I think they've weathered the storm enough, and they're one of the few teams I see accepting their role, right? We can win these other majors and then not win TI and still make a ton and still have an awesome living and still be seen as a great team. Mm-hmm. I think they're happy with where they're at.
I almost want to say TNC possibly as well, but then at the same time, Cuckoo has apparently hinted at possible changes, and I have reason to believe with some people that I talk to that, there are probably going to be some changes there too. So, I think Virtus Pro and maybe OG with their core, as you said.
EG, I think, is going to be 4 free agents and 1 player, whether that's going to be Sumail or Arteezy or Universe. But
we kind of talked about this a little bit, that you think if you're EG, who do you build around from scratch? You like Universe. I like Sumail.
I mean, I think it's one of those two. I think you just take your pick.
Well, my argument was that Sumail's just the younger player, ultimately, building a team around him. As far as also his marketing, frankly, is better than Universe's. And then on top of that, it feels like that you're just going to have more of a chance to just build a team around him as kind of that figurehead, right? Like this middle player that, gets the job done. He's a lot of action, arguably one of the best players in the world. Sure, it just feels weird building around an offlaner, I guess is my point. It's just not as sexy, right? It's just not as something that seems like you can do as well.
The fear there, though, is if Sumail ends up falling and slipping and not becoming the premium mid laner anymore, like say he falls even to 4th or 5th best, and you're building your team around him entirely, you kind of end up in a Na'Vi type situation where you want to keep this player that you've put all of this investment into, but he's just not performing anymore. I think that's way higher risk than putting it in somebody like a Universe who has shown he's been stable for years. And is just kind of always this figurehead for your team as the epitome of stability.
Yeah. That's a strong point. That is. But you again, nothing's been announced yet. But you think that the idea of them just flat out, like, why not keep both Universe and Sumail, and like why even change multiple players? Why not change maybe just 1 or 2? I
mean, I heard some things, but
so you have reason to believe.
I have reasonable belief that at the moment EG is going to make an official offer to 1 player. Whether they want to keep anyone from the roster or not is still up for debate. Okay. But the org from the rumblings that I heard are that they are only looking to invest in 1 player and then let them go from there.
All right. That would be quite. Is Peter Pan Dam coming back? Do we think that's a thing?
He did say he was going to keep playing. He wanted to play again. I don't know where he will play, but he wants to play again.
I would be curious to see how that works out, because he did that this last year too, and then that failed pretty quickly. With what was the team Wanted right there?
Actually, I mean, they had some good runs. The roster
they
looked
played
like it could have been
one
passable.
Tournament, and they lost early on, I think.
They played a couple. They stomped their way through a little cup, but
okay. Sure.
Anyway, I thought it could have potential if they put some time into it. But all right, let's keep going down the official list here and get through this stuff. I know it's drawn a little long. You got places to be.
Of course. So as far as official list, maybe not as big of a deal, but it's still relevant. Mineski actually announced their official new roster here.
This is going to be one of my new favorite rosters going into the season. It looks fun. You've got Mushi. Everyone loves Mushi. You've got Ice, who is like the most loved player in the region. Come on. Just an amazing guy. Like, throws a ton of money at the scene to make it happen. Jabs is really fun, produced a lot of cool content. Like, I'm super excited. So, just to run through it, the new Mineski roster did get announced that Nana, Mushi, Ice Ice Ice, Jabs, and Ninja Boogie. So, I don't know how much success they're going to have, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this to me is kind of the new faceless of the region. You know, a lot of people were really pumped up about faces with the roster for good reason, and they had some okay runs, but they never really won. You know, they never really did very well in that big event, right? So I'm almost like worried that's going to be the same case here to an extent. I feel like, I mean, what do we think of Mushi? Because yes, they had an okay run. They had a decent run in the Southeast Asian qualifiers. They just came up short. But I think a lot of that, to be fair, had to do with Ark and Mag joining the ranks in that case for them. Is Mushi really up there anymore as this mid player that we can rely on, or has he kind of fallen off?
I think he's fallen off at the moment, but I think it's not necessarily that he doesn't have the talent. I think it was almost a lack of drive at a certain point. So we'll have to see if he can pull it back and make something happen. I think the potential is there for sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of the question mark for me. But yeah, this is a team again I look at too, and again, I don't know how many people know this actually, but Ninja Boogie, another one of my Han homies, he is really old school right there. Going way back. So yeah, it's, you know, whenever I see his name pop up in the Southeast Asian region, it's fun to, and obviously this is a very good team. So they're going to be up there with the likes of course, you know, TNC right now, with a potentially pretty good roster. So, OG, we mentioned already, Ana out as their mid player. This one, it wasn't surprising to see, I think, for most people, but it's still kind of, I don't know. They
didn't say he was kicked. They said he wanted to go back to school.
Yeah.
He said he wants to take a semester off and he wants to go back to school. So maybe he felt like at the moment he's done his thing. Zai did the same thing after EG made a good run at TI. I mean, you got to just accept that sometimes these people don't want to make this their life and they need a break. And if he's feeling burnt, I think this is the best thing that can happen for the team.
And if that's the case, then 100% support, of course. You know, education's important. Absolutely. Do your thing. Come back. Dota 2 will still be here. But I don't, part of me, I don't know. Was that the case? Because throughout this whole year, he has kind of been the scapegoat for OG whenever they haven't had success. So I do kind of wonder how much of a nudge maybe he was given to be like, yeah, maybe, you know, go back to education.
If there was any player to nudge, to me it was S4 or No Tail, but I thought he was like the gold star. Him and Jerix were the shining lights on the team, but yeah, it is what it is. We don't have any more Ana, and you know, I will welcome RTZ to the roster once he feels like moving over.
Yeah, obviously you talk about this is another one of those, you know, what big name player is going to come here? That's going to be interesting to see pop in, because No Tail's proven to be a very flexible player, right? So he could definitely play mid. S4 can go back to the mid, perhaps. So they don't necessarily just need a middle player.
Yeah, I think they're going to seriously be looking at whoever EG doesn't keep. I think there's going to be a lot of potential there for them to play with that person. Definitely going to be interesting to see what they do. And you're right, they have enough flexible players that they could just see who's open and then say, okay, well, we can get the best in this position. Let's try to play around them. Go play 10 scrims and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm looking at this here too. Yeah, we kind of touched on it too, but Planet Odd officially disbanded. So just to clarify that, with the whole, you know, talking about Moon Meander earlier, and obviously Resolution, his situation, and that means Misery. What's the rest of the roster? Who's their mid player? Saksa, that's right. And there you go.
has the mid player.
Saksa's the mid player. But point is, all those players are up for, you know, and I've heard Misery's name quite a bit.
Well, and we would fit in with the kind of personalities they have. He would fit in extremely well. He's just kind of goofy. He seems fairly easygoing, but also dedicated. It could be a pretty good fit, actually. But yeah, we'll have to see.
I also find it just kind of funny that people are almost basing some of these rumors off who's following who on Twitter and who's removing who on Twitter. But
the players screw with fans in that way, by the way. They will intentionally do stuff just to mess with people.
I remember what Samael tweeted to Misery, because Misery was like, I got the strive now to go to TI8 as a player again and win it. And then Samael's like, you and I will do it together. And people are like, what? Misery's joining EG?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it even gets subtle enough that, like, in the South American scene, people will make different Facebook groups with, like, different pro players just to see if any fans notice and, like, make drama out of it. And as I said, Twitter followers and things like that. It's hilarious.
Oh, SCCC taking a picture with, like, every player at the after party. every time one of those came out, it'd be like, SCCC joining Liquid? SCCC joining OG? Yeah.
That guy was everywhere. He was running around like crazy.
Yeah, he was having fun, as most were. But like you said, again, this is just the beginning. There's so much, speculating we can do, but there hasn't been a whole lot of changes just yet. We still have to wait. Something tells me, though, by next week's show, if not the week after, we're going to have a lot clearer picture. We're going to have a lot more information, if in anything, to see, what to talk about and how things are moving forward. But I think it's a nice start. We got a nice little tease.
Yes.
To come.
And while we've got a little time until the next big tournament, we're going to have some dead time. A couple things possibly on the horizon that we can hint at and talk about next week. I've been talking to a couple third-party tournaments. They may be looking to put something on as soon as roster shuffles die down. We got the majors and minors to talk about and what those mean. We're going to have more roster drama. So we're going to have lots of fun stuff coming up in the next week or two.
Absolutely. There's going to be plenty, and we may have a little bit before the first minor/major coming up. I think it's set to happen in October, if I'm not mistaken. So a little over a month and a half. But as you said, if smaller events start taking place as these rosters kind of get settled in, and it's going to be fun. Entering a new season. That's pretty cool to be able to say. We got a new season ahead of us here of Dota 2 coming up. But I think that's a good place to wrap things up, though. They're pretty well.
It is.
So, Zrock, anything else? I mean, you know what? That was good. You did it. You said your point. You closed it out pretty nicely. So that's what we're just going to do. We're going to close out the show here as a whole. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. The DotPro show. Again, we're back to our regular schedule now. So every Friday, you can expect an episode here with the DotPro with myself, BreakyCPK, joined by Zrock once again. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.